He looked ashamed and cast his eyes down to the floor, knowing that he was guilty of an inexcusable transgression, the sin of procrastination. Chapter 28. Stupid boy! Stupid boy! Even though Woody felt fine, Fate ordered that he rest a while, and he sat the youngster in a comfy armchair. Fate had moved the chair over to a large floor-to-ceiling window in the lounge, so that the boy could watch the hunt when it began later in the morning. Fate and Evan were stood in the doorway, explaining to the landlord what had occurred. The landlord looked aghast, and Woody wondered why it appeared as though he was being told off by Fate. I'm really sorry, said the landlord, sounding genuinely remorseful, knowing that he was responsible for the safety of any and all of the hotel guests. I've been meaning to rebuild that wall and spray poisonous herb killer on the white hellebore, but with the hunt coming up, I've just been so busy. He then confessed that he actually had the poison locked in the cellar cupboard, ready to spray the poisonous herb with. He looked ashamed and cast his eyes down to the floor, knowing that he was guilty of an inexcusable transgression, the sin of procrastination. Sorry, he said, and then asked forgiveness of Evan. Evan felt as though it was not his place to administer forgiveness, so he went across to Woody to explain the landlord's quandary. Quite unexpectedly, Woody got up and walked across to the landlord and then offered him his hand of forgiveness. Nobody should be punished for an accident or a little carelessness. Woody's hand and wrist were engulfed in the landlord's large hands and sincerely shaken. Bless you, he said. I'm sorry, he said. Thank you, he repeated, and then he shook Woody's hand some more. Furthermore, as though to prove that he and procrastination were no longer acquainted, he declared that he would rebuild the wall at that very moment. He would also make a sign to indicate the presence of toxic herb killer after spraying the poisonous plants in the field. As he turned to leave, a thought occurred to him which prompted him to address Fate. Wisdom said that he may come down for the hunt. Then he continued with utmost sincerity. If he wants to know where I am, please inform him that I am poisoning the poisoner and doing some renovation work in the second field along. He then hurried away to make amends for his procrastinating thoughtlessness. Evan was now stood in front of Woody and was looking at Fate, who was as perplexed with the maturity of the boy as Evan was. Do you remember being called stupid for dropping a knife off your plate when you were taking your plate over the sink, or any other little mistake you made? He asked his older self. Stupid boy, what are you, boy? He quoted his father. Do you remember how it made you feel when you had to say, stupid, I'm a stupid boy? Evan could remember the knife-dropping incident, along with other reprimands for insignificant accidents, and then suddenly a painful recollection gave him a slap on the side of his head. I remember knocking a milk bottle over with my elbow while I was reaching across the table for the salt pot. And he clouted me, well, us, Woody interjected, so hard across the side of our head that he knocked me off the chair and onto the floor, the pig. Woody flinched at his defiance, which had voiced his rebellion out loud at his father's brutality for the first time that he could ever recall. No wonder I messed my life up, thought Erin, until he remembered Fate's adage about being the cause of all his effects. Surely Fate would agree that I was not responsible for the bad start in my life and that my father was the root of all my problems. It's not what happens to you in life that counts, it's how you handle it that matters, Fate told Evan, giving him a little reminder that he had no secrets from his mentor. Fate then gave Evan a nudge to let him know that they had to return to the task of making preparations. Evan took Woody back to the lounge chair and told him that they would see him later. He was about to add, "Be good," but thought that he was always good, and that it was only his trust and naivety that ended up getting him into trouble on odd occasions. Evan found himself trying to figure out exactly when it was that he, as a youngster, broke the law and began his life of self-destruction. It hurt his spirit and tore at his heart to think that he had let Woody and ultimately himself down so many times. He moved up to the youngster, bent toward him, kissed him on the forehead, and promised him that, "I will never let you down ever again." "Me neither, I won't let you down," returned Woody, and then he vowed, once more, to no longer be friends with the two brothers. "That's for the best," Evan assured his young self. Fate and Evan went to the kitchen, taking with them the cloth that contained the herb roots and bulb. After washing and scrubbing the parts of the plant they needed, they discarded the remainder into the bin. Fate cut and diced the roots, placed them on a clean linen cloth, and then asked Evan to hand him the bulb crusher. Once he had placed the bulb into the press, Fate squeezed it tight and let the drops of latex fall onto the diced roots. Taking hold of the four corners of the cloth and gathering them together to make a small sack, Fate hung the preparations in the window to dry. Evan wondered how long it would take the preparations to dry and what him and Fate would be doing while they were waiting. "Probably teaching me another life lesson," he thought. Once more, Fate answered the unasked question. "Coffee, made with fresh beans straight from Colombia via Fresh Lumber's coffee merchants." "How's the boy?" asked Love as she wandered into the kitchen. "He's fine now," Fate assured her. "He's resting in the lounge." "Yes, he looks well," confirmed Lust as she walked in, adjusting the contents of her bra. "He's talking to Wisdom." Evan did not quite hear the name that Lust had used when she mentioned that Woody was talking to somebody in the lounge. All he knew was that the youngster was talking to a stranger, and he did not feel at all relaxed about the situation. He decided to go to the lounge and find out what this new entity's intentions were. Fate, who could see the concern on Evan's face, put a reassuring hand on his shoulder and told him, "There is no need to worry about Wisdom. He is a fine chap who will do nothing to endanger the boy or to influence him in a negative manner of any kind. He will offer him only sound advice while imparting the most useful knowledge, which will be returned at no extra cost to you, but with added interest." Evan relaxed back onto the worktop, which he had been leaning against, giving the concept some thought. Seems like an obvious outcome and sounds as though an entity named Wisdom is the perfect choice to be teaching us lessons about life. After the coffee, it was time for the hunt, so they all left by the kitchen's back door. Fate was carrying the small sack of preparations. Evan was carrying 2 jars. Lust had her net, and Love had the leather bag. In the lane, the villagers were gathering, carrying their various methods of attracting and catching opportunities. There was an atmosphere of enthusiasm hanging in the air, refusing to be dampened, despite the best efforts of 2 miserable-looking souls who were stood on the bridge with their hands in their pockets. Evan could hear them moaning and complaining to each other. "Made any preparations for this hunt thing?" asked the one whose grey skin was as dull as the tone of his voice. "Nah," moaned the other one. "I was too tired last night after work." "Early night then instead, was it?" asked the first one, who looked like he could do with a good night's sleep himself. "Nah, I fell asleep watching telly. Then when I woke up, I went to the pub for a few beers. It helps me to sleep at bedtime. Did you have a good night in the pub? Not really, he grumbled. I lost at cards. The beer was poor. I could barely manage 5 pints. He took a matchstick out of his pocket and proceeded to pick his teeth with it, before inquiring whether his companion had made any preparations for the hunt, feeling as though he already knew the answer to his question. No point, was the response. I never seem to attract any decent opportunities. Yet while he was moaning, his prophecy came true, for one of the silvery sparkling balls of light passed quickly by, hurrying away to a more worthy adversary. Doom and Gloom stood on a bridge another 5 minutes, complaining how unfair life seemed to treat them, and that if it wasn't for bad luck, they'd have no luck at all. Doom asked his friend if he was staying to watch the hunt. Gloom took a rain check, saying, There's no point. It's always the same people who get the best opportunities. You know what I mean, those goody two-shoes, what with their preparations, their plans, and their endless enthusiasm. Seriously, could you be bothered? The two prophets turned their backs on the hunt and the opportunities that were there for those who were willing to believe that they could secure them, and for those who had taken the time to make preparations to assist them in their endeavours. As they left, Evan could still hear them both complaining that, although the sun was shining down, it was sure to rain later on. In the lounge, Wisdom, who was sat across from the boy, nodded at the lad whom he had been conversing with earlier. Losers, said Wisdom, after watching Doom, Gloom, and their self-fulfilling prophecies leave the hunt. Losers, echoed Woody, not really certain who they were talking about. The pair then continued watching the escapades of the hunters, who were trying all kinds of tactics and ideas to catch the elusive spheres, which were passing most of them by. Only those who had spent time making preparations and devising a plan of action seemed to be making any progress in their endeavours to catch the sparkling spheres. Only the determined, the consistent, and the most persistent hunters were managing to successfully secure the sought-after opportunities. One of the opportunities, which shone exceptionally bright, hovered momentarily on the lane above a small pile of preparations, before settling on the ground in order to sample the free produce. The sphere's self-confidence was not about to endanger its self-preservation, so it kept one eye on Love while nibbling at the herbal preparations. This enabled Lust to sneak up behind the shining sphere and make a snatch at it. But with speed and stealth, it outmaneuvered the entity, flying straight into the waiting net of Love. Resistance is futile, cried Love, as she brought the net down onto the ground, trapping the sphere inside. The opportunity was not willing to relinquish its independence without testing the worthiness of its new possessor, and began to struggle, trying to make good its escape. Love trod on the handle of the net and quickly moved along its length, securing her prey. She picked it out of the net, keeping a firm hold of her catch. Not the first one to try and outmaneuver Love, she whispered at her captive, which then employed a tactic of its own. It informed Love that she needed to let it go, as it was already promised to one of the other hunters, and that she was, in actual fact, breaking the code of conduct and abusing the spirit of the hunt. Nonsense, Love protested adamantly. I know all of the rules. She was adamant that nothing was coming between her and her victory spoils, and so the opportunity resigned itself to its captor's obstinate refusal to back down. Love handed the windfall to her sister, Love, and waved the plunder in the air so that Woody could see the rewards of their labour. I know her, cried Woody, as he pointed to Lust, Proud to be associated with such a fine huntress." "Don't we all?" replied Wisdom, instantly wishing he had not been so mean about a past intimacy who had previously been so generous to him. Meanwhile, Fate and Heaven were busy baiting their trap. They had placed a third of their preparations into the smaller of the two jars, laid the jar on its side at the edge of the lane, and then hid behind a bush to lay in wait. "What do we do now?" whispered Evan. "We wait here for an opportunity to come along, and because we use the correct herbs to make the right preparations, the opportunity, being unable to resist them, will make its way into the jar and swallow them up." Evan listened to Fate enthused about the rest of their plan. "Due to the fact that we dried the herbs which we made the preparations from, we can be certain that once the opportunity feeds on them, they will swell up, making the sphere larger than it was when it entered the jar. Henceforth, it will not be able to get back until it has digested the herbs." Just as Fate was finishing explaining the tactical manoeuvres of their plan, an opportunity appeared at the mouth of the jar. It cautiously hovered in the air for a moment before settling on the ground. The opportunity appeared to be sniffing the contents of the jar, being attracted to the preparations inside. It tried to enter the jar. Unfortunately, the mouth of the jar was too small, and not for want of trying, the opportunity could not force itself inside. Desperate to take the preparations, it thrust itself repeatedly against the jar, which started rolling around, spilling the contents onto the ground. Without hesitation, the opportunity scooped up the preparations and sped off in the distance to feast on the herbs. "Blast!" cursed Evan, realizing they had missed a great chance to secure the opportunity. They came out from behind the bush, frustrated, though not defeated. They nearly caught that one," cried Woody, whose recovery was beginning to overthrow the remainder of any poisons which may still be loitering in his system. Because of the properties of the antidote, Woody felt almost as vibrant as he had before he was attacked by the toxins in the plant, and he wished he was more directly involved in the hunt. "We'll use the bigger jar," Fate decided, and asked Evan to take the lid off so he could place the remainder of the preparations inside. The lid was stuck fast, and he could not budge it, so he gave it to Fate, who passed him the herbs. Surprisingly, Fate managed no better. "I know," said Fate. "You hold the jar with both hands, and I'll twist the lid off." "Right then," agreed Evan, and he placed the cloth containing the preparations on the lid whilst he took hold of the jar. "I'm ready when you are." "Shh!" hushed Fate. "Keep still and be quiet." "Look," said Woody, whose eyes had grown wide and whose finger was pointing at the opportunity which was now loitering just above the linen cloth. Wisdom told the boy he should keep still and be quiet so as not to startle the opportunity. The opportunity hung in the air, reminding the boy of a magician's floating sphere, which moves around under a silk cloth. "It does not actually float in the air," Wisdom informed him. "The floating ball is attached to a thick, strong wire that is held in the magician's hand. That is why he needs to use the cloth to hide the wire stick beneath." Woody was so fascinated at the secret which had just been revealed to him that he never gave a thought to how Wisdom knew such a thing, as it was reasonable to assume by the outfit which he was wearing that he was a knowledgeable entity. Equations, formulas, and chemical symbols such as H2O and Fe were embroidered all over the green two-piece affair. Wisdom went on to explain to the excited youngster the exact method a magician uses when performing the floating sphere trick. Woody gave himself a secret little hug, thinking how clever he would sound to Scooby and his brother when he explained about the magic trick, completely forgetting his earlier promise to Evan about dumping the two brothers. When the opportunity nosed its way into the top of the cloth and began consuming the preparations, Fate quickly grabbed the linen cloth and twisted the four corners together. Once the sphere settled down, Fate transferred it to a pouch which he pulled from inside one of his zipped pockets, and then passed it to Evan. "Well done," Evan congratulated Fate. "Well done too," countered Fate, letting Evan know that he knew it was a joint effort which had been rewarded. Woody banged on the window and waved his arms in the air, cheering for himself, the elder, and Fate. They smiled at the boy, and Evan hoisted their catch into the air. Woody informed Wisdom that Fate and Evan had done really well. Not bad," responded Wisdom, deliberately sounding unimpressed, hoping to force a reaction from the youngster, which he did. "I suppose you could do better," Woody said, challenging Wisdom. "Much better, and so could you." "Me?" "Yes, you," Wisdom assured him. "All you have to do is go looking for opportunities instead of waiting for them to come to you." "Go where?" "Quite frankly, they are to be found just about anywhere that one is prepared to look with a positive attitude." "Well, I can't go looking for them. I'm supposed to be something or other." "Convalescing?" "Yes, that's the word. Convalescing." "Would you like to go hunting for an opportunity?" asked Wisdom, already knowing the answer to his question. Yeah, I would. I really would," replied Woody, who was feeling uninvolved, unimportant, and rather left out. "I'll fix it for you," Wisdom assured him most confidently. Then he opened the top part of a nearby window and called out, "Fate! Hey, Fate! Is it all right to take the boy hunting?" "It is as far as I'm concerned," he called back, knowing that it would be safe with the trustworthy entity. "How do you feel about Wisdom's offer?" he asked, looking at Evan. Now, obviously, after what had occurred with the herbs, it was to be expected that Evan had uncertainties as to the boy's susceptibility to danger if he wandered off. Then there was a concern of whether letting Woody be alone with a stranger was responsible. Fate put his mind at ease straight away in that department, ensuring him that Wisdom's integrity was unquestionable and that his morals were incontestable. Evan finally agreed to the idea, after satisfying himself that the boy would be safe and that Wisdom's intentions and motives were honourable and pure. Fate gave Wisdom the nod of approval. "There we are," said Wisdom. "I told you they would say yes." "Let's go then," replied the youngster, almost shaking with excitement and enthusiasm. "You can't go on a hunt wearing that white t-shirt," Wisdom explained. "Wait there a moment." Wisdom then looked the youngster over before he went to the lost property office regarding more appropriate attire for the lad. Although he was away for barely a couple of minutes, Woody's impatience had him wringing his fingers together. "That should be the right size if my estimation was correct," Wisdom assured him, passing a soft cotton, grey camouflage top to his new hunting partner. "Hey, thanks," enthused young Woody, as he changed his top right there and then. He and Wisdom then left the hotel and set off on a hunt of their own.